Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're listening from. My name is Eric, and this is the Five Head Podcast. Welcome, everyone, to the 19th episode of the Five Head Podcast. For this episode, we're going to dive into Senator Cory Booker's introduction of the Keep Your Pay Act. This proposal is a massive proposal that's going to send ripples through the middle class, and I think from a political standpoint, was a genius move on his part. So we're going to get into all of that in this episode. But first, make sure you like, subscribe, do the thing, share, put some comments in there, rage bait on me. It's just a couple of button clicks for you, but it really helps a brother out. And if you have any questions or debates or comments that you don't want to put in the comments, you can email me at eric.middleviewmedia@gmail.com. That's eric.middleviewmedia@gmail.com. So before we dive into this, I'm going to try to shorten these episodes a little bit by kind of just talking about one thing, like the Keep Your Pay Act in this episode. And the intention of that is, by keeping it in one subject instead of everything that's going on, we can talk a little bit more about the one thing. We can dive into it a bit more. And hopefully I'll be able to put out more episodes more often. So for this one, we're going to talk about this proposal by Cory Booker because it's massive. So I'm sure you've heard of it by now, but let's just go over a few things about this. This is called the Keep Your Pay Act. And it's basically going to eliminate income taxes for households that make up to $75,000 a year. So if you're single, it'll eliminate income taxes for up to $37,500. And if you're a couple, but there's one person that files as head of household, it would eliminate income taxes up to $56,250 a year. But for most households that are dual income, they file jointly, and this would eliminate taxes up to $75,000 a year. What it will also do is expand the child tax credit. So this raises the credit to $4,320 for children under 6 and $3,600 for those aged 6 to 17. So if you have kids, the child tax credit gets raised. And if you make less than $75,000 a year, which means you would pay no taxes, you still get the child tax credit. So you would pay no taxes and you would still get a tax return. It also introduces a one-time $2,400 baby bonus for families every time a child is born. That's to help pay for child expenses like formula and diapers and stuff like that. Also, the earned income tax credit for workers that don't have children, it kind of triples that. It expands eligibility into younger workers ages 19 to 24 and to older workers 65 plus. So that's the basis of this tax plan. Cory Booker basically wants to make it so you don't pay any taxes if you make less than $75,000 a year as a household. So the question today is going to be, obviously, is this a good idea or a great idea? Really, that's what it comes down to, because this is an insane idea. But could you imagine if you didn't have to pay taxes as a household for the first $75,000 that you make? According to the census, the median household income is about $83,730 a year. However, even though that's the median, 45.3% of all households still earn less than $75,000 per year. That is a massive amount of households that would be getting a massive pay raise. Currently, if you make about $75,000 a year as a household, you're paying anywhere from $7,500 to $10,000 a year in income taxes, just federal income taxes. That's a huge chunk of money. When you look at your paycheck and you see how much the government has taken out every month, and it's $700 something a month just in federal income taxes, forget the state income taxes and all that stuff. That's real money to people, having $700 more every single month. And it doesn't just help people who are on salary that make less than $75,000 a year as a household. It helps people who own small businesses. It helps people who work as 1099 contractors. It helps people who do side gigs. Because even if you make $125,000 a year running your own small business, after your write-offs are applied, if your taxable income is less than $75,000 a year, then you're not paying taxes. Now, I don't know how serious Cory Booker is in this proposal, because this is a massively genius move. So I'm 43 years old, and for my entire life, the grand old party has preached to me, just like they've preached to you and everyone else, that taxes are theft, that everyone would be better off if the government just took less from everybody, that the way that we get people in the middle class to prosperity is to stop taking money from them. And in general, I agree with that sentiment. And I've talked about this before in the podcast. If you work for 40 hours a week, you should be paid for 40 hours a week, not 30 of it. But at the same time, we're a wealthy first world society, and most people believe that we should be able to pool our money together in a way that allows us to take care of the people who truly need it. But even though most people agree with that across the board, the stance from the GOP has always been taxes are theft. When people are young and they're listening to what the Democrat Party stands for and what the Republican Party stands for, and it's molding them and making them who they become politically once they're an adult. One thing they'll tell you is the GOP has preached to them since they were a little kid that taxes are theft, taxes are bad, taxes are a way that the government can control your life. And Trump himself, in his current second term, has mentioned the idea of completely removing income taxes. So even though the GOP my entire life have preached that taxes are theft, and even though Trump has said we should be able to eliminate income taxes, it's taken a Democrat in 2026 to come out with this proposal to just completely eliminate taxes for households that make less than $75,000 a year. And to me, it puts all of the GOP on notice. It's like calling the GOP's bluff. You preach for years and years and decades that taxes are so bad, sign my proposal eliminating them. That is a massive move because I am definitely a person who believes taxes are theft and believes the best way for everyone in the middle to reach their full potential of prosperity and have the chance to even maybe put some money aside and maybe take investment opportunities that can lead to building wealth is by letting them keep the money that they earn. Don't take $800 a month from them and then give them $300 a month in food stamps. Just stop taking $800 a month from them and they don't need food stamps. That's always been my attitude. Anyways, I'm digressing a little bit. Let's get back to talking about this. So a Democrat is now proposing to do this, and I think it's going to have ripple effects because this tax plan is out now. The full details aren't exactly worked out yet, but the main provisions of this tax plan are out now. And as people start reading this and they start looking at their paycheck, they're going to be all for it. Now, Republican voters should be all for it because they've been saying taxes are theft. But now you're going to get Democrat voters on board with this for two reasons. Number one, it's a Democrat proposing this, therefore they can look at their paycheck like someone who's a Republican would and be like, yeah, this is theft. They would be so much better off if they didn't take this money on my paycheck. And number two, there's other provisions in the bill that will make up for the loss of tax revenue for the federal government. And this is what is going to make the GOP in Congress go against this bill. At least in my opinion, this is what is going to be their excuse for going against this bill. So what is Cory Booker's plan for making up that revenue? First of all, 45.3% of all households make $75,000 or less. That seems like a lot of tax revenue, right? Well, let's break down some math here. So in 2025, the federal government collected about $5.23 trillion in total revenue. The income tax portion of that only accounts for 2.5 to 2.7 trillion. So they're estimating that the revenue loss to the government is about $640 billion a year. And that's roughly only 12 to 13% of the total 5.23 trillion that the government brings in. So it's a lot of money. It's a big chunk. But even though federal income taxes in general pay for half of the federal revenue, removing taxes up to $75,000 per household is not removing that half of the federal revenue. It's not even removing half of the overall individual income tax revenue. What I'm saying is, even though the majority of the country earns that or less, it's not as big of a hit on the federal revenue as you think it is. And why is determining how big of a hit to the federal revenue this is so important? So this is where the Democrat argument comes in, the Republican argument comes in, and then we'll find some middle ground here. You see, people like Bernie Sanders and Chuck Schumer and your AOCs and your Elizabeth Warrens and these main faces across the Democrat Party, what they have been advocating for, I mean, Bernie's been advocating for 40 years now, is to tax the rich, right? Is to raise taxes on the rich. If we just tax the rich more, we could generate $2 trillion more a year in federal tax revenue, and it would solve all of our problems. And that's their argument. It helps us all if we raise taxes on the few. And then when you try to have a debate about that idea, the debate ends because you just get told that you're simping for the rich. Why do you love billionaires so much? You're never going to be a billionaire. They don't care about you. You just love billionaires for some reason. You can never get like a real discussion, an honest discussion, an argument about it. Because the right is not against the idea of taxing the rich more simply because they love billionaires. No one on the right cares how much money Jeff Bezos has. It's the principle that the right is against. The principle of the government finding excuses to take more and more and more from people. In order to stop the government from trying to control everyone's individual life, we have to make sure that we're not giving them more and more power into people's lives. And we're not letting them take more and more from people, taking private property, taking rights away, taking money from them. No one on the right cares if Jeff Bezos has $200 million today and tomorrow he only has $150 million. No one's crying about that. No one cares. But every time the government institutes something that's supposed to just affect a small percentage of people, at some point it ends up affecting everyone. And it's a legit argument because when income taxes were first introduced, they were introduced for the top 1% of society. And within 30 years, everyone is paying income taxes. You know what's funny about taxes as well? Not only were they supposed to only be for the rich, But now they've grown to not only does everyone pay them, the rich can earn money in ways that are not classified by the IRS as quote, quote, income, and therefore don't pay income taxes on it. So it started, was supposed to be just for the rich, is now for everyone but the rich. So anyway, let me get back to the face of the Democrat Party now, because they've been going about taxing the rich all wrong, just due to that principle that I'm talking about. You're going to automatically turn off half the country if your idea for helping someone is to take from someone else. What Cory Booker wants to do here is raise taxes on the rich. That is the ultimate goal. That is the goal of the Democrat Party. The rich have money. We want their money. And I don't mean that to come off in an insulting way, but that's essentially what it is. Bernie's out there every single day posting that the rich is unfair and we need to just raise corporate taxes and we need to tax the wealth in this way and tax them when they borrow money off assets. But you're never going to get buy-in from half the company if your sole purpose is to find a way to go after private citizens and take their money from them. The people on the right just don't like the government doing that. They don't like the government, quote, quote, stealing from people. Leave people alone. Stop taking from them. Let them worry about themselves. Let them handle themselves. Let them live how they want. That's the argument you're getting from that. Where Cory Booker now has completely flipped the script. To offset the $640 billion a year that the federal government would lose in income tax revenue, Cory Booker plans to increase corporate taxes, right? We know that's coming. They want to target corporate levies too. So this is kind of a new one, which is increasing the taxes on stock buybacks and then tightening the limits on deductions for executive compensation. They also want to do things like close what we consider loopholes, but they're not loopholes. They're tax code that's available to everyone. It just doesn't apply to us because most of us take our pay and salary. But instead of coming out and saying we want to raise taxes on those things, he's going about it a completely opposite way. He's preaching, hey, everyone in the country who makes less than $75,000 a year, you shouldn't have to pay taxes at all. That's it. When he first put out this plan, he didn't even talk about how much revenue that would lose for the federal government and how they would make up that revenue. But how you get massive buy-in for a tax proposal is to sell it for the benefit of the most amount of people. And most amount of households are making right about that $75,000 a year. And it would be a massive increase to their life to not have taxes coming out of their paycheck. So what I'm saying here is if you want to get people to buy into taxing the rich a little bit more, and you even want people on the right to buy into that, people who see taxation as theft, the first thing you do is lower their taxes. That should have been the first thing Trump did. So that way people can see more money on their paycheck. Because when you do it all across the board, you may see a little bit on your paycheck, but all you're seeing every single day on the news and on social media are graphs about how you're seeing a little bit of money added to your paycheck, but the ones who make the most are seeing the biggest reward from this tax cuts, right? There's always like this negative comparison to the rich, where if you just focus on the middle class for a second, once people start living with those tax cuts, they're not going to want those tax raises to come back. Democrats cannot run in this midterm or for the next presidency on raising middle class taxes. Now that Trump has cut middle class taxes, you can't raise those again or you'll lose. So Cory Booker is doing this the right way. He's preaching this bill as a tax cut for 43.5% of all households in America. That's the way Bernie Sanders should have went about it. Instead of focusing on how we can bring some Americans down in order to lessen the gap between the lowest tier and the highest tier, why don't we do something to bring the lower tiers up first? Because what's going to happen here is, let's say, because the GOP controls the House and Senate, they take this proposal and remove the tax raises on the wealthy and the corporations out of this, and they just pass this bill where everyone making $75,000 or less a year doesn't have to pay income tax. And they just let that go for a year. They let it get implemented. You start seeing $700 to $1,000 more on your paycheck every month. Then a year from now, 2 years from now, whatever the case is, then the government can say, hey, since we made those tax cuts, we have less government money. And because we're never going to fix our spending, because we always spend 1 to 2 trillions more than we bring in, and we're never going to fix that, we're going to have to go further into country debt, or we're going to have to raise some taxes to make up for this tax loss. Now, when half of the country has now seen a raise on their paycheck, they are going to be completely against taxes being reapplied to them. You can't let me start to build a life off the fact that I make $800 more a month than I used to now, and then take it all away from me. I'll lose everything. So in order to make up that $640 billion a year, they'll start having to introduce tax raises, but not to the people that they just cut all those taxes for. So now you say to people like, look, I know you're paying zero taxes and you love that, and you're able to provide Christmases for your kids. You're able to buy some stocks, maybe grow a little bit of wealth. You're able to upgrade your house, whatever the case, but we need a little bit more money. So you know what? We won't touch you guys. We're glad that you're happy. We want you to be able to keep that little bit of extra money. So in order to make this right, just let us raise taxes on the rich a little bit. And I guarantee you there'll be less pushback from the middle and lower class Republican side, even on principle, for raising the taxes a little bit for big corporation, the billionaires, etc. Like let's use this for an example. If you're making $50,000 a year right now and you hate billionaires, you hate Elon Musk because he's worth $800 billion, right? If I hired you right now into my company, $1 million a year, that's nowhere near what Elon Musk makes. But if you were to go from $50,000 a year to $1 million a year right now, you wouldn't care at all that Elon Musk is a billionaire. Because a lot of the complaint about billionaires is the comparison to your own life. When you are struggling, when you are having a hard time, and you see that a billionaire just bought a gold toilet, it upsets you. It ticks you off. It makes you think it's so unfair. But if I started paying you $1 million a year to come work for me, that $1 million a year would completely change your life. It won't bother you as much that Elon Musk is buying a gold toilet because you're doing good. You're making good money. You're able to provide for your family. You're able to put money away. You're able to grow your money, buy some stocks. You're able to go on vacation every year. You're not worried about if you have enough money for food, for groceries for the week. Once your life is better, there's less hatred for the people who have it better than you. What Cory Booker's plan here is focusing on bringing the bottom up. Because once the bottom is brought up a little bit, they're going to care a lot less what happens to the rich. If you want Republicans to buy into the government taking just a little bit more money from the billionaires, which these Republicans don't know, don't actually care about, and will never become, the only thing that's stopping them from supporting you now is the principle of the government taking from people. You get that buy-in by taking less from them to start. Because the second that they are not paying taxes anymore, and we hit a point where more tax revenue has to come to the government in some way, most people will say, tax the billionaire and not me. I can't afford to go back to paying taxes on this $75,000. The billionaire worth $800 billion can afford to only be worth $750 billion. I swear to goodness, you will get more buy-in on that. And that's why I think this is a genius proposal by Cory Booker. The end goal is to raise taxes on the billionaires. The progressive wing of the Democrat Party wants to move into more social benefits, more into a collective society, even on an economic scale. And the one way to do that is to start eliminating wealth, or at least controlling how much wealth a person can have. But when you sell it like that, when you come out and say, we need to eliminate wealth, we need to purposely go after and bring people down, no one's buying into that on a large enough scale. So he's coming in with a, let's bring people up, bro. Let's do this. Forget the billionaires. They're rich. Don't worry about them. Let's bring the bottom up. It's a genius plan, and it's going to cause ripples through Congress because, like I said at the beginning of the episode, the GOP has preached to us our whole lives, taxation is theft. Donald Trump himself has even mentioned we could probably eliminate taxes if the tariffs are so good. Like, there would be no excuse for the GOP to not go with this. And he's trying to call the GOP's bluff. That's what all this is. The end goal is always to raise taxes on billionaires. I believe this is a bluff call on Cory Booker, but I believe it's a win-win bluff call. Because the second Republicans try to block this bill, it invalidates everything that they've ever preached about taxes and the government reaching into your pocket and taking money, and how we need to help Americans succeed by taking less from them and have the government stop stealing their money and giving it to fraud and all that stuff. It will completely invalidate that. Because here's a proposal that does everything you just said, puts all the money back into the middle class's pocket, stops taking from them, allows them to get paid for 100% of their labor. So any excuse to block it makes the GOP just sound like they've just been BS your whole life when it comes to taxes. That's where I think this massive political win is for Cory Booker. If he is serious about proposing this, he needs to have it written and propose it officially. Because I think it'll just get a lot of buy-in from a lot of people that are like me, to be honest with you. That when it comes to economics and when it comes to taxes and stuff, are pretty much on the right when it comes to that stuff. And every time we hear the Democrat Party preach about income equality and bridging the gap between the rich and the bottom, they're always proposing that we tax the rich to lessen everyone else's burden. But taxing the rich doesn't lessen our burden. If you're telling me, you know what's going to help you? We're going to tax Elon Musk more, but you're still going to take the same amount of money out of my paycheck every time I get paid? You're not lessening my burden just because you upped their burden. My burden's still the same. All that's saying to me is that you want me to vote for you so that you can take more money from my fellow citizens and still going to take the same amount of money from me. So really, you're only bringing the top down. You're never proposing to bring the bottom up. And now Cory Booker is doing that. I think that's going to go way further on the idea of taxing the rich than simply saying, hey, we're going to keep you broke and still take all the money we can from you, but we're also going to take even more money from other people that have nothing to do with you, that won't affect you positively or negatively. That's a hard sell. But now the sell is, hey, we're going to do something that's going to positively affect you. We're just going to stop taking taxes from you altogether. You know, if you can get your taxable income down under 75K. I mean, that's a huge selling point. So look, I'll just finish with this. I fully support this idea from Cory Booker. And seeing a lot of people arguing on social media, claiming that no, this is all a farce. The goal here is to raise corporate taxes. That's what they're trying to do. And yes, I've talked about that through this whole episode. Of course, they're trying to raise corporate taxes. But here's my argument against that. Anytime Democrats are in power, and they will be in power again because the pendulum always swings, they raise corporate taxes. They always do. The difference here is if the GOP were to adopt this tax idea and eliminate taxes for the first $75,000 of earnings, then when Democrats raise corporate taxes like they're going to do anyway, at least you got a tax cut out of it. Because if not, they're going to raise corporate taxes anyway, and your taxes are still going to be the same. And you can make another argument that when taxes are cut for the entire middle class and people have more spending money, corporations are going to make more money, which will offset some of their tax raises. So for that reason, I really hope the GOP adopts this from Cory Booker and passes it now while Trump is president and while they still have control. Even if they have to amend it and change it and not institute the corporate tax raises right now, knowing darn well that when Democrats get in power, they will raise the corporate tax rates. And maybe that's what they should do. Maybe the GOP should adopt this and not raise corporate taxes right now. Let everyone spend a year seeing more money on their paycheck. And when the Democrats come into power, whether it's in 2026, or I guess they couldn't do anything in 2026 because Trump is president. So in 2029, if they gain full control of power, then they're going to have to try to sell to everyone that they've got to end that tax cut or why they need to raise taxes on corporations, which they were going to do anyway. But I want to know what you think. If you are a conservative and your whole life you believed taxes are theft, would you be for no more taxes coming out of your paycheck or a significant amount less in taxes if your household makes more than $75,000 a year because that first $75,000 will be tax-free? Would you be okay with, say, Elon Musk paying a tax on the loans he takes out for his stock asset value? Also, if you're a conservative, let me know. How would you feel if the GOP blocks this proposal in Congress? And then if you're a Democrat, I also want to know. As a party who generally feels like taxes should be raised so we can collectively pull more money together and collectively provide more for everyone through society, how do you feel about this idea? Are you okay with it only if they tax the rich enough to make up for it plus more? Or are you on board with the idea that taking less from everyone as is so they have more money to provide for themselves? Are you for or against this? So let me know in the comments what you think. I'm going to keep an eye on this. I hope this wasn't just for show. I hope he's serious. I hope he gets this written up, and I hope we get it thrown around in Congress and they can work out other details and do amendments and find a way to make this happen. Because I would love to see something as bold as taxes for the majority of us just simply going away. Anyways, that's the episode for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, debates, let me know in the comments and I'll try to address it in the next episode. Or you could email me at eric.middleviewmedia@gmail.com. Thank you guys for listening. Bye for now.